Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Lori.
Are you ready to talk about the Pisces new moon?
Yes, I am.
All right. Now, first things first, when do we have the Pisces new moon?
It is on Saturday, March 13th. It's at 5:21 in the morning.
All right. So before we wake up in the morning, the new cycle will have begun. And the way we think about the new moon is we think of the cycles. The new moon starts a cycle. It is when the moon is in between the earth and the sun. So we look at it, we don't see anything. So it's considered the dark time of the cycle. It's when we metaphorically think of planting a seed to begin a new cycle. From there, the moon gets a tiny little bit bigger every night till it reaches, in a week, it'll reach the first quarter moon. And then the full moon a week after that, which is the idea is that is the time of full illumination of the seed that's planted at the new moon. And then a week later, it breaks down to the third quarter moon. And then a week after that, we're back to the next new moon.
That's
Well,
right.
anything else to say about that? Just the simple cycle?
No, just well, I guess the only thing I'll add is as much as you can, get out and check it out. It's worth taking a look at.
Yeah. I'll tell you, last night I could see it and it was so beautiful. Just the very last tiny little crescent, the balsamic crescent was so beautiful last night. And
Nice.
yeah, as it starts getting bigger every night, you'll see that tiny new crescent starting. It's such a beautiful thing. The other thing, just to mention is, we're talking about this as the 28-day cycle from new moon to new moon, but there's also the larger cycle, which we will mention the dates at the end, I think, as well. But the seed that is planted now, the larger cycle will come into full illumination at the Pisces full moon, which is, when did we decide? September. That happens.
Yeah, it's September 20th. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So given that this is a Pisces new moon, I think we should talk about Pisces.
Sounds good to me. Pisces. Pisces is elusive, so it's a little maybe elusive talking about it. uh, Pisces refers to things that are intangible. I like to think of well, the old symbol for Pisces was the fishes. So it's this the fishes swimming around this vast ocean is what I really think about. It tends to be elusive. It can be fickle on the kind of that end of things, but it also can be totally transcendent and deals with things that are mystical and hard to grasp.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny, the fish, you see the symbol, the fishes are pointing in two different directions. And I always think about, trying to grab a hold of them and they just slip right through your fingers. And that's sort of the sense I have around Pisces is you can't really grasp it. I remember reading somewhere, they were talking about Pisces as being consciousness as opposed to the contents of consciousness, and trying to just grasp that idea of what is consciousness without the contents of it. And yeah, it's hard to understand Pisces. It's one of the most difficult signs, I think, to understand. It's ruled
Yeah.
by Neptune. And given that, astrology is a symbolic language, so there's layers and layers of meaning to every symbol. And I think of with Pisces and Neptune as well, just the idea of understanding impressions, understanding what the purpose of suffering, there's a lot about suffering with Pisces. And we tend to think that our suffering is our own, but it's human suffering that we sometimes, drop a foot into or go for a swim in. And, the purpose of it, I think, is very much around developing compassion as we understand that that is a human experience, the whole idea of suffering. So I think, yeah, you could think in terms of, this new moon as planting a seed. What would the seed be that you're planting?
Well, I can't help but think immediately that this is about healing. But what does that mean? It really means that work of going inwards into those quiet spaces within, and that's where you kind of, ironically, you contact maybe some of your own suffering. But if you keep going through that, it contacts you with the collective, and it makes you realize that you're just one drop in an ocean. And I think a lot about, we have this ocean, and then each one of us is a wave, and when you're in the wave you think that you're all that exists. But when you get to the kind of crest of that wave and you look out and you see there's this huge ocean, that's kind of the essence of Pisces, is that realization.
Yeah, and
uh,
that's, that just as you're saying that, it's the same idea as the suffering,
mhm,
we're all a part of this.
mhm,
So the seed that you want to plant is going to be something around healing, around developing compassion, around working with the richness of our collective suffering and the ability to tap into that compassion resulting in healing.
yeah. And I think I always think of it as being sort of a soft energy. It's effusive, it's spreading out. Pisces is a mutable sign, so it's dispersing. It kind of, allows things to adapt and change and move. That's part of the reason it's so hard to grasp. And then the water part of it really brings in just water is associated with healing. So part of that is, like the whole idea of going to the spa really is about going into the waters, whether that was the hot springs or something at another time. I mean, that's part of what the connection is, with Pisces. So
Yeah,
yeah.
Pisces, there's a lot around just the breaking down of barriers,
Mhm.
just making connections.
Mm. Oh, I know what else too. It's also it's the end of the zodiac, so it's the final sign we have that symbolizes the end of winter, which is really the end of that still time. I know that's only for the northern half of the globe, but it nonetheless is still a transition time. And for us up here, it's the kickoff to next is Aries. So wow, what a different energy, totally different. So this is that last like bit of quiet and solitude and calm before it's time to like get the seeds in the ground, grow the plants, do all the things that we do,
Yeah.
all the way through harvest. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, and the dream side of
Mm,
Pisces is also important to
mhm.
touch on. I always, whenever I
Yeah.
think of Pisces, I think of my mother outstanding, feeding birds out of her hands to avoid the more difficult things going on inside the household. There's that ability to kind of separate from the world and allow yourself
Mhm.
into a dream space as well. She had a lot of
Yeah.
Pisces. Anyway, so
Yeah.
with that in mind, let's just touch very quickly. If someone has Aries rising, this is going to be the seed that you're going to want to plant is in the 12th house.
Mhm.
So how how would you think about planting a Pisces seed in the 12th house?
Mm. It's got to contend with the collective. So I think anybody with Aries rising is kind of a me focus, and so it's very much about directing that type of energy into the total opposite.
Yeah.
So just the expansive state and meditation, things like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Planting a seed to develop that in a very quiet, unconscious part of the self. So if you have Taurus rising, it's happening in the 11th house. So that would be just in a real simple manner, thinking about planting a seed for compassion toward community, toward a larger humanitarian um,
Mm.
collective in that way. If you have Gemini rising, it's happening in the 10th house. What do you
Mhm.
think about that?
I think bringing more of a perhaps a more meditative or larger view kind of approach to work.
Yeah,
Yep.
bringing that into your career life. If you have
Hmm.
Cancer rising, it's happening in the 9th house. So we could think of that as planting a seed um, of real deep compassion and understanding of other cultures, other people who have a different worldview than your own. Really,
Mhm.
yeah, understanding that bigger picture.
Yeah.
Leo rising, it's happening in the 8th house.
Mhm. So that's a little more behind the scenes. The eighth house is another one of those tricky places to just lay down and explain. But I think it's about applying, compassion to other people's stuff. So everybody's got their baggage and their stuff, and we bump into each other on that level all the time. So it's about applying a little more forgiveness, understanding to that.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
to people's individual baggage as opposed to the one we just talked about, which was more of a worldview. This is more a
Mhm.
personal thing. If you've got Virgo rising, it's happening in the 7th house. So it's, bringing compassion, um, planting a seed of compassion in a close relationship. If you have Libra rising, it would
Yeah.
be in the 6th house.
Yeah, I was gonna say with Virgo is also that ecstatic state. I was thinking about that with Pisces and in your partnership.
Yeah.
So have fun with that. um, but in Libra in the sixth house, that to me that's very simple. It's like start that meditation practice
Yes.
because yep, to
Yeah.
get it in your routine, do it on your daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
Definitely.
mhm.
Um, I was going to say something silly, but I'll resist. If you have Scorpio rising, it's happening in the 5th house. So that would be a good time to just plant a seed of uh, bringing some of this sensitivity to a creative project.
Mhm,
Maybe if you've got children, teaching your children to meditate,
mhm,
something along those lines, or, bringing something into your creativity that's connected
mhm,
with a Pisces. I'm sort of
mhm.
struggling on that one off the top of my head.
Oh, well, it is, fifth house is also the place of giving love. So I think that brings in a transcendent quality to it right away to think about that in terms of that this is your gift to the world, like your creative project or even or hanging out with children brings that playfulness in. So yeah.
Okay, so if you have Sagittarius rising, it's happening in your 4th house.
Oh boy. Your family.
Family, yeah,
Yep. Get your
compassion,
dad to meditate. Just kidding.
right, right,
But
right. Planting a seed of
mhm,
compassion for your
yeah.
family.
Mhm.
As simple
Yeah.
as that. If you've got Capricorn rising, it's happening in your 3rd house. So
Mhm.
you're going to plant a seed of compassionate
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. Or as you ride the bus around your neighborhood, like being compassionate with all those folks that are really your neighbors,
Right,
that.
right. Or
Mhm,
bringing that kind of tender understanding to your relationship with your siblings, which is
mm,
another big 3rd house
mhm,
issue. If you have Aquarius rising, this new moon is falling in your 2nd house. Now, how are you going to bring these ideas of sensitivity and compassion and to
mm,
your resources,
mm.
uh, finances?
Just for me, it goes right to radical self-care, like this deep relationship to yourself and how you take care of yourself and how that is an
Yeah,
important
that
segment.
self-worth.
Yeah.
You could also twist that on its head a little bit and
Mhm.
say you compassionately give a big donation to some organization that really supports your spiritual ideals.
Totally. Yeah.
That would be a real great use for it.
Mhm.
And then if you have Pisces rising, it's in your 1st house, and it is a matter of bringing that level of sensitive compassion and unconditional love to yourself.
Mhm.
Simple as that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll add to that is just that that's one of the hardest relationships is the one to ourselves, and one that isn't talked a whole lot about in Western society. So that's actually a harder one than one might think.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah,
It is. It's so personal. You
mm,
can't see it
yeah,
without that mirror of the 7th house of the other. It's
hmm
really hard to see it.
that's
Indeed.
good. Oh,
Okay.
well, let's look at the chart, huh?
Yeah, let's look at the chart. I almost forgot about that part.
I know, right? Getting
It's
all
a good
excited.
one. This is the best new moon we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, so this is a nice little bit of a nice fluffy new moon.
Yeah, it's a really super sweet new moon.
Hmm. So again, this is Eastern Standard Time, and actually the next day will be Eastern Daylight Time, but there's still an Eastern Standard on this one.
Yeah.
And there's our new moon of Pisces down here, right next to Neptune and Venus, which really just brings in, this kind of underscores all that Pisces nebulousness and underscores that kind of state of consciousness that we're talking a lot about, pointing out in the direction of forgiveness and compassion and thinking about people as a collective, seeing the self and the other, those kinds of things.
That is just so, so sweet.
Hmm. Yes. So, woo, very Neptunian. So that's why this is an extra good time to figure out where that Pisces is in your chart, as we just did, and really think carefully about how you'd like to be that day, because this is about being and bringing presence to how you are that day rather than taking an action.
Yeah, I
So,
think this is a day for a long nap, a
yeah.
long bubble bath,
Hmm.
something that really soothes you in a restful
Mm.
way that you can kind of go inward and, yeah, rest.
Hmm.
A
Soothe
place.
those ragged edges. What we just think
Yeah,
of. Yeah, this is
yeah,
a pampering day, whatever that means to you, and really be good to yourself.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Be super sweet, super sweet day.
yeah.
All right.
Now let's get on to the. So that's a true statement about what we're talking about, but there's still some edges of things working in, right, Lori?
Yes.
Like this
Um,
new moon is in the crosshairs a little bit.
Interesting. Okay. So just to highlight it, whoops, I got the wrong line here. Hold on one second. Just to highlight it, we've talked about a lot is this square that's happening all this year between Saturn and Uranus. Now, just to kind of bring that back to our awareness, we had the first exact square of that happened in February. The second
Mhm.
one, I think, happens in June, and then the last one happens in December. So this is an energy that's really, really active all year long. And it's, I see it in the culture as just this culture clash that we have going on. Saturn wants to
Mhm.
keep things in a certain way and stabilize them and hold them in a past stable position, while Uranus is like, wake up, change things. So these two
Mhm.
are really at cross purposes and in a bit of an argument with each other all year round. So what does that have to do with the new moon?
Well, you can kind of tell from looking at this chart that the sun and the moon are smack dab in the middle of this debate. You can see it with this little symbol over here in the aspect grid too. You can see there's a little, almost like a check mark thing. That is letting you know that it is smack dab in the middle of those two. So so on the collective level, I just can't help but think that this is the day to dream about what kind of society we really want to see. Like this is the day to just go ahead and go beyond boundaries and just picture that, imagine that, ask yourself that question: what would it really look like? Like, what if we lived in a world with more respect, with less violence, that kind of thing? Like, what would you picture? What would you envision?
Yeah. 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 And I think that's really, really significant for us all to do that. And then as well in our own personal lives, if you know what sign, what house that Pisces is in your chart, you can also see where the sign Aquarius is, where the sign Taurus is, and think about where that stress is between those two houses in your own personal life, and understanding that on a personal level, this is a day to really dream of how to bring those two together into a workable combination.
Nice. Well said.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a struggle in all of our lives between those two houses
Mhm.
in this year. Some of us have it a lot harder because it bumps into our personal planets in different ways. Some of
Mhm.
us, it's just a general behind the scenes annoyance going on all year. But there's that challenge, those two
Mhm.
pieces pulling each other in in different directions. And the seed that you plant now in your nap or your bubble bath or your long meditation or whatever, the ritual that you create to kind of support both ends of that struggle, because
Hmm.
they both have a place.
Yeah. And it's a very human thing. It's a human condition to be pulled in different directions. And this is where there's sort of a chafe going on. But it's necessary change in our society. Um, and the other thing too, the other connection here is to Pluto. You see those little stars down in this aspect grid. So it's sextile to Pluto,
Oh,
the sun,
nice.
moon. So that brings in the empowerment. To me, that says that this
Nice.
dream that you have, it's got power. It's potent. It has it's got some efficacy to it. Like there's a chance, a very good chance that if some of your dreams can come to fruition,
Yeah.
is sort of where my head goes with this. This is Pluto's empowerment. It's tricky to work with, but it can be empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's in a sextile aspect, which is an opportunity and a possibility
Mhm.
and excitement.
Yeah.
It brings that in. So as long as you can hold this middle position and stabilize these two ends without fighting against one or the other, then it allows that Pluto to do its work of really empowering that seed that you're planting, that dream that you're planting. Oh, I
Mhm.
love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's nice. Nice
That,
segment.
that's lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Mm.
this new moon. I can't wait to
Yeah.
kind of do some work with it.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah.
what else do we need to talk about? Does this cover everything?
I'd like to add one other pretty brief thing, but and
Okay.
that's the role of Mercury in this chart, and that's because all of these new lunations have shown us the nodal axis here at Gemini. The North Node is at 15 Gemini, and so all I'm going to bring that up for is that whatever this dream is that you dream of and you think of and you feel is empowered, you also need to talk about it or express it in some way. Like there's also an element of like, I had this idea of like I was like seeing like theater or like spoken word or even some form of poetry, but in some way to embody this kind of this dream that you have. Like there's a requirement that we also just talk about it, like in some way, but it could be in a really beautiful way of talking about it, an eloquence, rather than trying to convince anybody of anything. It's just speaking it.
I love that you brought
Mhm.
that up, because if you hadn't brought that up, I would not have noticed that in this chart, that Mercury does not make any aspects, any major aspects to any planets.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It's
conjunct the
true.
ascendant. So, yeah, it needs to speak. The fact
Mm.
that it is not making any direct aspect to anything kind of elevates the importance of the voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Wow.
and it's also it's trying to reach Jupiter. It's almost, well, I'm sorry, I take that
Right.
back. Jupiter has been passed by Mercury, so it's
Yeah.
already had that conversation, but now it's escaping the confines of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so
That's awesome. So
it
it's
is
got big things
unexpected.
to say. It's
Hmm.
got big things to say, and the nodes are encouraging it in a creative way. I love
Hmm.
that. I love that you brought that
Yeah.
in. Thank you.
So that means while you're in your bubble bath, you're dreaming this big, awesome dream, and then you're gonna pop out of that bubble bath and share it. And
In some way. So what
yeah.
house does it fall in for you, Jenny? The new moon.
Oh, it falls in the ninth house, which is really nice. I was thinking the ninth house is one of the things that can be as a course of study, and I just enrolled myself in a new meditation program,
Wow.
so I feel like that's going to be very much part of my new moon ritual as I come into
Awesome.
the new moon. Yeah. What about
Awesome.
you?
Well, it falls in my seventh house.
Hmm.
Um, relationship, in a long distance relationship, I'll have to give some thought to that. But what I did realize is that it is the full moon following this. I will be with my partner, I
Hmm.
believe. So that's kind of nice that whatever I dream, I can bring into that full illumination on the full moon. So that's
Nice.
pretty cool. All right.
Yes.
I think that
Okay.
covers everything we need to say.
I think so. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. And we'll do this again in 2 weeks for the full moon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lori. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.